this is Socket from the Fun Robotics Network, and here with me is Team 3355 Black Box. Here at the KPIC Super Qualifiers, they have an amazing intake, really efficient Spindexer that's super fast at transferring the balls, and super consistent far zone shooting. Learn more about their bot on Behind the Bot.
This video on fun is brought to you by viewers like you and also in partnership with the following.
FRCTs has been trusted by over 250 First teams to save on custom shirts and team apparel. Founded by First alumni and offering a free 14-day turnaround with faster options available, you can save time and money for your team when you get a free quote by scanning the QR code or going to frcts.com. Kettering University's cutting-edge programs and their experiential co-op model seamlessly blend the professional and academic worlds, offering hands-on, future-focused learning that empowers students to pursue new ideas and inspires other institutions to follow their lead. Don't just be ahead of the curve, create the curve. Get more information at kettering.edu/first.
So why don't we start out with your intake? Tell me a little bit about all the iterations you've gone through and any key features that you think make it cool.
Yeah, so our intake has gone through a lot of iterations. Actually, at the start of the season, we had a hard-mounted intake, and we noticed that it really helps if you have a little bit of compliance in your intake, like when balls go through it. And so that was one of the key features that we wanted, was to be able to have it be on a way to swivel, if that makes sense. And then other than that, we also wanted to be able to raise the intake one against defense, just because we've noticed that a lot of robots get tipped up or stuff like that happens to them. So we wanted to avoid that. And then another thing is just we wanted to intake the balls very quickly. And at the start of the season, they were actually out of go build gecko wheels. So we kind of designed a run. And they're basically PLA gecko wheels that are quite stiff compared to gecko wheels. And then they have silicone adhesive coated all over them, so that they're super, super grippy on the balls. Another super innovative thing about our intake is the counter roller. We haven't seen a lot of teams do this year, but we noticed that it helps a ton when we're intaking balls out of a group, because the balls get sucked right onto the platform, and it takes very little time for us to get free balls in our robot.
A little bit more about the intake. I see you have these wedges over here with these designs. Have you iterated on any of this? Have you seen any performance difference with different designs?
Yeah, we actually started out with completely different stuff in here at the start of the season. We started out with much thinner outside wedges, and they broke immediately. And then on the inside, we were able to actually fit 2 balls on this ramp, but we noticed that actually was worse than only getting 1 because the balls would get jammed there 24/7. So we ended up redesigning the whole vectoring here, and now it only fits 1 ball on this ramp. So when we're intaking, we don't have any issues with jamming. The tape also helps with that. It looks kind of chintzy, but it actually allows the balls to deform into the tape a bit, so that one always goes instead of the other.
Very cool. And then let's move on to your Spindexer. I see you already have some the sensors in there, and then your 3 servos. So talk to me a little bit about how your Spindexer works.
Yeah, so our Spindexer is geared to these 3 Axon Minis. They're geared up 2-to-1 for speed. So we actually are able to use the servos on servo mode instead of continuous, which a lot of teams have issues with needing to use a motor for continuous or using servos on continuous mode and that being really hard because you need an encoder. But we geared them up 2-to-1 and had 3 of them so that we can effectively keep that power, but also have the rotation of around 540 degrees because of the 2-to-1. And that helps us be able to control every part of the Spindexer and have it be really quickly and have it move really quickly.
So talking a little bit about your sensor. So how do you have the automation to basically intake and automatically switch balls?
Yeah, so basically how we have our code structured is the robot is a set of subsystems, and each of them is a finite state machine, and then there's an overall finite state machine at the robot level that controls all of the lower level subsystem finite state machines. So each subsystem knows what state it's in, and then based on what state it's in, it will decide what to do. So for our Spindexer, for example, if it's in the intaking state, it's reading these sensors, and then when it senses a ball with a distance, it'll know that it has a ball, then it'll draw color data, and then as soon as it knows that, it'll immediately spin to the next index automatically. As well, it keeps all of these in an array, so we can just basically use basic array searching to get our sorting during auto and teleop. As well, it's not hard-coded, so let's say we only intake 2 balls in auto. It'll know it only intook 2, it'll know their colors, it'll shoot only 2, and then it'll pick up the pattern where it left off on the next go-around to the goal.
Okay. Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about how you get these balls from your Spindexer into your shooter.
Yeah, so this year we started out with one servo that just drove a shaft, and it actually, like, we thought it would work just because it was very simple and stuff, but it ended up taking a lot of abuse because it's in the back here, and we had to switch it out of being just 3D prints to having like full carbon fiber struts in between these two servos. And we also upped the servo count, like I said, from 1 to 2 because we noticed it was very slow and it was limiting the amount of time. Like, it was limiting our cycle time because we couldn't get the balls out of the Spindexer fast enough. So we geared them up 2 to 1 to the central shaft, which just basically pushes this flicker. And we've noticed that it was very like a lot of teams have thought that like spindexing can really limit your like time to shoot. So that's part of the reason why we actually chose to do far zone, was because we noticed that when you're shooting far zone, you need more time to spin up your flywheels anyway. So that time you lose by flicking balls through the Spindexer is actually almost helpful because then you can control exactly when you shoot them and exactly what RPM your flywheel's at.
Very cool. So do you have any numbers as to like how fast you shoot from the far zone generally? And we'll talk about your turret after this.
Yeah, we don't have any exact numbers, but we posted a short on YouTube and we calculated it's about 1 second. So on optimal conditions in shooting from far zone, we can shoot on a full battery like 1 second, all 3.
All right, very cool. That's moving on to your shooter subsystem. I see you have a turret with a bearing stack, which I think a lot of teams can learn from. So why don't you talk to me a little about how you designed all that?
Yeah, so our bearing stack is loosely based upon the one that Clueless used in their Freight Frenzy season, if that's correct. Yeah. So it's basically just a big bearing, a small bearing, and a big bearing, and they are stacked on top of each other so that this little plate on the inside can spin around the bearings. And so the actual bearings don't move, but the turret does.
So that's like a rail.
So it's like a rail, yeah. And then a lot of teams ask questions about our gear and where we got it manufactured. And we got it manufactured from Scent, which is a organization in Nevada that cuts all of our aluminum for us.
Very cool. And what speed are you running your turret at? Have you seen any issues with it, or would you like to gear up any faster?
Yeah, so initially we wanted to have this motor be a 1620, and the gear ratio would put that at an end RPM of about like 300, but the Gobodo was out of stock, so we decided to settle on a 1150 initially, and then we were going to upgrade it later. But we've actually seen that with the end RPM of about 180 that it's been really effective. We've had no problems with it being too slow. And so, yeah, we've been really happy with how that is. And since it has a lot of torque, for those really fine adjustments, it'll get up to that speed and it'll do them really quickly, which we found has been really good.
All right. I think that's a good overview of the turret. Now moving on to your shooter, I see you have a very simple shooter, but obviously it's worked very well for you. So why don't you tell me about some of the most, I guess, important iterations that you've made?
Right, so initially you can see from kickoff, we've been set on the 2-motor design. We've seen a lot of teams running 1 motor, but we decided to run 2 because, especially going from far zone, it's really important to get that re-spin up time to be as short as possible. So that's the first part of it. And then you'll kind of notice that it's really just a simple design. We have just a couple of plates that are pocketed. We have them both just belted 1-to-1 to this. They're both 6,000 RPM bear motors. And then we just have our flywheel, which is 2 Gobodo 70mm rhinos. There's weights in our flywheel, so that really retains some of the velocity, but a lot of teams will notice that it is fixed angle. We decided to do this because it will reduce the mechanical complexity of the turret, and because we did the calculations, and the only place we can't shoot from the goal if we have fixed angle is within about 1.5 feet of the wall of the goal. So anywhere back from that we can shoot. However, this has forced us to have some pretty unique control relating to our turret to control the RPM fine enough to get those balls to release with that fixed release angle. So do you want to just jump into control now?
Yeah, why don't we jump into how you use your limelight, all of your auto aim subsystem, anything that you want to talk about?
Right, so basically we'll start with the limelight. We initially started using odometry for our aiming system because we liked the thought of being able to aim while we were moving without that motion blur affecting our aim. However, we found that even with a tuned Gobodo pinpoint, there was still drift throughout a match, and it wasn't exactly what we wanted, since from the far zone, there's only really a tolerance of about 1 degree or 2 until you're getting off and you're going to start missing more. So we decided to swap to a hybrid aiming system. So how it works is the odometry will align the turret to pretty close. So like a theoretical target angle of where it is based on our X and Y position relative to the known goal position. And then once the limelight sees the April tag on the goal, it'll basically take over. So we're always analyzing the data that's coming in from the limelight, and then we're analyzing if it's like quote unquote clean data. And then as soon as we get that clean data, the Odo is no longer aiming and it's limelight. So we're using the offset from the goal that the limelight sees with the TX, and it's going to align right onto that April tag. And then using odometry data, we know what part of the field we're in, and so we can assign a different set offset from where that center of that April tag is to be aiming right at the exact part of the goal we want to be hitting. So basically maximizing the amount of backboard there is, if that makes sense.
Yep, that sounds very
Additional,
cool. Oh.
There's also one more part of our aiming. So for the limelight, using the vertical angle offset from the April tag and inverse trig, we can figure out our exact distance away from the goal because of the known limelight position on the robot, and that lets us do our velocity. So when the limelight's aligning it with the yaw degree, it's assessing distance, and then we're assigning RPM based off of a lookup table that we've tuned and that distance.
Yep, that sounds very cool. And even with this hybrid approach, have you seen any need to relocalize manually in TeleOp, or has it not been an issue given the limelight?
So we used to have to relocalize when we were using odometry, but we have not had to relocalize since we implemented our new system.
That sounds very cool. And then looking forward to the Washington State Championships, is there anything that you hope to continue to improve on this robot, or is it really just driver practice and auto?
Yeah, so there's a lot of small inconsistencies and problems during match that's just a result of not having enough practice because we've spent so long refining the mechanical and software of the robot. So we're really planning on focusing on improving our driver consistency and making our autos tighter and all that stuff just to prepare to be super consistent during quals and playoffs.
Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much Team 3355 for this interview. I'm sure you're going to do great in this Super Qualifier and at States. Tune in next time on Behind the Bot.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to stay up to date on future fun videos. Kettering University's cutting-edge programs and their experiential co-op model seamlessly blend the professional and academic worlds, offering hands-on, feature-focused learning that empowers students to pursue new ideas and inspires other institutions to follow their lead. Don't just be ahead of the curve, create the curve. Get more information at kettering.edu/first.
FRCTs has been trusted by over 250 first teams to save on custom shirts and team apparel. Founded by First alumni and offering a free 14-day turnaround with faster options available, you can save time and money for your team when you get a free quote by scanning the QR code or going to frcts.com.